In our last episode, we explored the town of Welch, a town whose people suffered under Atomic Mining Services, a company that kicked them out of their own homes to get at the minerals beneath them. A town that was ultimately destroyed when an accidental explosion happened in mineshaft number 9, owned by AMS, and poured out into Welch. The people of Welch and other residents of the ash heap began to organize to protest AMS and other mining companies in Appalachia like Hornwright Industrial and Garahan Mining. We've seen plenty of evidence of their protests, but where did they organize? The answer to that question brings us to the Rusty Pick, a local watering hole at the northern side of the ash heap right on Highway 83. But when we arrive 25 years later, it's infested with ghouls. After clearing the ghouls, we can take a look at the sights. The owners of this establishment really played up the whole mining angle. They have a beautiful The Rusty Pick sign outside, a one-of-a-kind item here in Appalachia. At the eastern end of the parking lot, we find a bit of a storage shed. There's nothing of interest in here. There's a water tower nearby, and beneath it, someone had built a bit of a scrap wall, but it's not locked. On the other side of the door, we find a big rusting out picker-up truck. An explosives crate. Here I found a plan for the MIRV frag grenade. Lucky. And then heading toward the building itself, we find a human skeleton tangled up in a lone wanderer motorcycle. The entrance has been walled in with a big scrap barricade, a barricade that makes use of an abandoned flatbed truck. On the flatbed truck, we find a number of musical instruments: a steel guitar, a tuba, an upright piano, a snare drum, and a banjo. Behind the instruments are a bunch of speakers, and on a barrel near to the banjo is a note. Jesse White, Honky Tonk Set List. Jesse White, the Dancing Bandit at the Rusty Pick. Friday, October 22nd, outdoor honky tonk. Setlist: In Time, Psalms, Hellbent, Sea of Tears, Tornadoes in Texas, The Railroad, Snake Song, Carry My Body Down, Wayfarin' Stranger, Lead Me Home, The Devil Is My Running Mate, Soul of a Man, and 13. Country fans might be able to piece together some of these pop culture references. There are some lore issues here. The song Carry My Body Down was released in 2011. There are a few others that are more modern country songs, and it looks like they were composed in the Fallout universe. Above the door to the Rusty Pick is a big neon sign, Bar. Just outside we find a bulletin board with a big poster advertising the Uncanny Caverns and Garahan Mining. When ready, we can open the big red door to the Rusty Pick. We arrive in the seating area. There's a door with a red light to the right and a pathway leading to the kitchen to the left. Immediately to the left, we see a coat closet. All that's left here is a bit of glowing fungus, an explosives crate, and an ammo box. We can go out a hole in the wall to kill some ghouls. Heading into the bar, we see a billiard table, and lying on a shelf behind the billiard table is a holotape. Join the Auto Miners support squad.
Looking for a new career? Like working with your hands, finding solutions to challenging problems, fixing complex machinery in exciting environments? Then it's time you join the Hornwright Industrial Auto Miners support squads. We're looking for talented men and gals interested in earning good pay for hard work, keeping Hornwright Industrial's fleet of advanced auto mining robots active and kicking. Pop by the Hornwright recruitment booth in downtown Charleston and sign up today.
So Hornwright was trying to offer technician jobs to the laid-off miners. I doubt that went over very well. In the kitchen, we saw a beer hat on a shelf above the cash register. Next to the cash register, we find a skill level 1 locked tool case. There's a first aid kit behind the bar and a bit more scrap. From here, we find a hallway to the north. This leads to the bathrooms. Heading into the women's bathroom first, we can kill another ghoul. The stalls are all empty, save one that has some right-of-way on the tank. Then crossing the hall to the men's restroom, we find a fella still working it out and some glowing fungus beneath the urinals. That's it for the bathrooms and the bar. It's a pretty small establishment. All that's left is to explore what's through the door with the glowing red light. A staircase leading to the basement. After killing a rad roach at the top of the stairs, we can head down to the basement. We find a headless marble bust down here. And another ghoul! Moving west, we find a weapons workbench. On a shelf next to it, we can get a wrapped cap and a miner's uniform. Here we find a skill level 2 locked box safe. Beneath the radio next to a table with a toolbox and a vise on top of it. This vise was part of a gun trap that had already been triggered, but I came back later and accidentally triggered it myself. And next to this, we find a desk with a pompadour wig on top. Holy cow, a lot of costumes here. A terminal and a note. Clara Weber Diary. Old tavern with a secret meeting hall built into the old mine excess. This was a local watering hole used by the miners after their shifts, run by an older woman whose husband and sons were killed in a mining accident. Passed down through her family, it sits on a forgotten mine access that was used as a speakeasy during Prohibition, which now serves as a secret meeting hall for the labor unions. So the rusty pick sits on a mine shaft? I wonder how deep it goes. Next, we can hack this skill level 1 locked Mick Flanagan's terminal. Mick Flanagan's terminal. Keep out. Inside, we find 7 entries. In the first one, the first layoffs hit Hornwright this week. 12 men, all with families. Some of them worked at the company for 10 years or more. No warning, no severance. It was all in the contract, you see. Hornwright reserves the right to terminate this agreement at any time without warning. It's kind of ironic how a bunch of stinking lawyers with pens could break the backs of miners with pickaxes. It happened so quickly, it took time to figure out the cause. Turns out they started bringing in robots from that newfangled AMS company that built Watauga. That means something needs to be done before we all lose our jobs. Now we begin to better understand why the miners whose homes had been destroyed by AMS had been protesting at the Rockhound owned by Hornwright. Many of them had worked for Hornwright, and here we learn they lost their jobs because Hornwright and AMS built the auto miner, which made their jobs redundant. In the next one, finally had a chance to speak with O'Connor and Fletcher today. They've agreed to gather 20 miners each and meet back at the woods outside of Charleston. It's time to meet and figure out how we're going to fight Hornwright, AMS, and anyone else that threatens our way of life. I'm sensing that a few of the miners don't want to join the cause, but we'll make them change their mind. It's all of us or none of us. There's nothing in between. In number 3, the plan's set. O'Connor's group is heading to Watauga to protest AMS. Fletcher's group will head to Charleston to flip the finger at Hornwright, and my group is going to slow down the works at the Rockhound on Mount Blair. We'll shout, we'll hold signs, and we swing a single pick until they're willing to talk to us. We got Sam Blackwell waiting in the wings to give us a hand if the companies are willing to talk. I only hope we can keep our people in line. I'm hearing some folks talking about going farther than just protesting. And we already know that some of them did. In the next one, 2 of the folks from my group got arrested last night for throwing rotten vegetables at Penny Hornwright's limo. Cop said some bull crap about assault, but how can you hurt someone with a tomato? We tried to put a call into Sam Blackwell since he knows the legal mumbo-jumbo, but he suddenly isn't answering any of our calls. When I finally got through to his secretary, she said she hadn't seen him in days. I hope this isn't a trick that AMS or Hornwright cooked up to weaken our side. We know from the primary plot of the game exactly why Sam Blackwell disappeared and where he went. It had nothing to do with the miners, but everything to do with Daniel Hornwright and his hired goon. I covered that in my video on the Hornwright Industrial Headquarters that you can watch here. In the next one, Fletcher's entire group was arrested last night for trespassing on Hornwright property, and he got canned. Somehow the property line for the mine mysteriously moved 100 feet outwards overnight, and the miners didn't know they were standing on private land. That SOB of a CEO, Daniel Hornwright, waited until Blackwell skipped out on us to pull this stunt. So, likes to play dirty? Fine, we'll play dirty. Let's see how he likes it when we take some shovels to his damn auto miners. In the next one, word came in from Welch that a bunch of veins of ultracite peeked out their ugly mugs after a ground shaker 2 days ago. Lost half of my team when they ran home to start grabbing whatever they could. Not even 12 hours after the frenzy, AMS goon squads moved in, ready to demolish houses to get at their property. People were none too pleased. That's when shooting broke out. I've called for another meeting with O'Connor's group. We need to act now before AMS and Hornwright erases us from the map. So it was ultracite that appeared at Welch. We covered this a bit in my last video on Welch, but Mineshaft number 9, which was owned by AMS, was directly beneath the town of Welch. AMS scrubbed the mine looking for ultracite but couldn't find any. But we now know from this terminal that an earthquake or some sort of tectonic movement caused ultracite to appear in Mineshaft number 9 and to push out into the town of Welch. Looks like these guys thought they could cash in on it by harvesting the ultracite in their own town, but AMS wasn't going to have any of it. And so violence broke out in Welch, which we covered in my last video. But what we don't learn here is exactly how depleted ultracite came into contact with non-depleted ultracite, which must be what caused the explosion that destroyed Welch. In the final one, we've decided to split into 2 groups again. I'm taking my group to capture the Rockhound on Mount Blair, and O'Connor will take his to Bramwell to blow their mega mansion sky high. Since Hornwright are such good friends with AMS, it's time to show them both we aren't the kind of folk that can be pushed around. After we are heard here, it'll be time to take the fight to Watauga and burn it to the ground. It's possible this will be my last entry, so if anyone reads this and I'm long buried, I hope they carry on the message and keep the fight alive. Wow, this really got out of hand, but we know that he and his protesters didn't get very far. They managed to destroy an unoccupied, unfinished mega mansion in Bramwell, but they didn't destroy the Garahan mansion or the Hornwright mansion. They succeeded in taking the Rockhound for a couple of days, but then the National Guard moved in and quickly removed them. Penny Hornwright told us that the damage was minimal. They simply put their remaining staff into working overtime, 24-hour shifts to make up their losses. And we know that they never made it to Watauga. Watauga is still standing. After looting this room, we can pass through a western door. Here we find a security door to the left, and after killing a radroach, we find a suit of power armor. In my game, it was just the frame and a Raider power armor helmet. But we can go ahead and snag the fusion core. Heading out, the basement opens into another room to the east. We pass by some sort of yellow machine, and then we find a vine-covered hole in the wall, which leads to the mine shaft we read about in the terminal. Following this tunnel, we kill a mole rat and a mole miner. The walls are covered in glowing fungus and brain fungus. After looting to our heart's content, we can follow this path to the end. We see that at one time there was a path to the right, but it looks like this portion of the mine shaft has caved in, and it might have taken out one of the protesters. We find a man's skeleton partially buried in the rubble. But the path to the northwest is still open, and here we find even more mole miners. This pathway stops in a small room with a makeshift table in the middle covered in lanterns. It's made out of barrels and shipping crates. Looks like this is where the protesters organized. And on this table we find the holotape, "Your orders arrived."
Hello, Mech. I wanted to let you know I've procured those tools you and your boys were asking after, along with all the nails and safety equipment you could need. But we don't do deliveries. Bring the money to my place in Welch. You know where to find the Duchess.
It's Duchess. We learned about Duchess in my video on Welch. She was the town's drug dealer, but it looks like she was also supplying the protesters with tools, possibly the tools they used to destroy the unfinished mansion in Bramwell. Nearby we find an end-of-dungeon steamer truck and an explosives crate. But this is where the mine shaft ends. There's no telling how deep it went before the other path caved in, but there's nothing left here to explore. So, retracing our steps and doing a final sweep of the rusty pick, we find a U-Minute vending machine near to an ice cooler just outside by the door, and if we climb onto the roof, we find a skeleton with a sleeping bag, a cooking station, a pile of wood, and a duffel bag. And that's it for the rusty pick. These poor pre-war miners were having a hard time dealing with this horrible situation. It looks like some of them resorted to violence, but the violence didn't work. How many of them died trying to protect their homes and their jobs? How many of them would have lived had they simply packed up and done something else with their lives? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. The bombs dropped just a few days later, putting an end to all of this drama we've been learning about in this series. What are your thoughts about this drama? Do you sympathize with Garahan, Hornwright, or Atomic Mining Services? Do you see what they were doing as inevitable? These companies had to make a profit, and they had to keep up with the times. If they didn't automate their mining services, another company would have. A lesson Garahan learned the hard and painful way. Or do you sympathize with the miners? Miners who built up their lives and families here in Appalachia, dependent on the industries here. It's here where they bought their homes, started their families, built their lives. Is it fair to them to be forced to uproot everything they've built over years and even decades, without warning and without severance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many new videos here on my channel each and every week, so if you don't want to miss the next one, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. They come on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.